Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Crack the Code for a Superior UX, Integrate Stratusphere UX with ServiceNow. I'm Kristen McGargle, Senior Marketing Manager with Liquidware, and we're glad that you've joined us today. This webinar is being recorded. You will get a link to this recording within a couple of business days, so feel free to review it and share it with a colleague. If at any point today you have a question or a comment, you can place it in the chat or Q&A feature, and we'll happy to address it as time allows. For today's webinar, we've got James O'Regan, Product Marketing Manager with Liquidware, and Chris Walker, Senior Solutions Architect and Stratusphere UX Subject Matter Expert with Liquidware. James, ready to kick things off?
Yes, thanks very much, Kristen. So thank you everyone for joining us. As Kristen said, we are going to talk about Stratusphere UX and our integration with ServiceNow. And we're delighted to have Chris Walker, who is our SME for Stratusphere. So just to kick us off, I wanted to go through what Liquidware do. So when we think of Liquidware, what we say is we go beyond DEX. So we're going to talk about Stratusphere, which is one of our DEX solutions, along with command control. But we also do some other things. We have FlexApp, which delivers dynamic applications, and that's integrated with our UEM solution. And Profile Unity then is our UEM solution. And as I said, it can be used for that. But the other aspects of DEX around your desktop, which is a huge part of a end user experience, and obviously FlexApp with your applications, which no one can work without their applications. So two vital areas around your desktop and your applications. So as I said, we're going to focus on Stratusphere today. Stratusphere monitors and optimizes DEX. It has unparalleled amounts of data and analytics. And what Chris is going to show you today is how to take some of that data and bring it into ServiceNow, which is a request we get from a lot of customers. So that's just a brief overview of what we do here at Liquidware, and I'm going to hand over to Chris now.
Thanks, James. So yeah, as James was talking about, we have a lot of different solutions from our monitoring and diagnostics. So Stratusphere is designed as a diagnostic platform. It can perform many features and use cases, as we're going to cover later in the slide here. But looking at our capabilities, Stratusphere can monitor your servers, your users, Mac, Windows, Linux, iGel, Stratadesk, pretty much any endpoint that a user may be using, virtual, physical, or cloud, and allow me to pull in all that data and really look deep into them. So how far are they from their access point and their Wi-Fi information? What's their CPU temperature on the machine? How is an application response time? Is talking to a database on the back end. What is the latency to that database? So next slide, please. All right, so talk about the different metrics. And this is just a sampling of some of the metrics that are in Stratusphere. So if you look at like machine inventory, make, model, serial number, BIOS version, how much hard drive space is free, what is the make and model, even down to the monitors, the resolution, and in some cases, depending on the monitor, the actual make, model, and serial number of that monitor. So just pure inventory type data. On the right-hand side, application performance. So monitoring it at a process level, what are the applications doing inside the system? So you got the general machine, CPU, memory, disk, and network in the machine. Then we're monitoring the individual processes inside of that machine. So Outlook.exe talking to the Office 365 servers. What is the latency from Outlook.exe, me and my house, to the Microsoft front doors? Machine security, firewall services, things like that, drive, secure boot, CPU temperature, as I talked about earlier, Wi-Fi information. So a lot of data inside of Stratusphere to provide you with diagnostics, but other use cases as well. How can I use this data? Don't buy just a product for just one purpose. Next slide. So Kristen, our first poll question.
First poll question. We're going to launch this on the screen here. Can everyone see the question?
Yep.
Okay, what is your current biggest challenge with integrating monitoring tools into your ITSM platform? Lack of real-time data integration, difficulty in creating actionable insights, compatibility with existing systems, and budget or development resource constraints. So we'll just take a moment for everyone to be able to answer the question before we move on. All right, looks like we have had everyone answer and sharing.
Yes, I thought. Budget and development resources. So especially with ServiceNow, it takes a while to integrate these applications. Um, development time, testing, Q&A, and then ServiceNow is doing rollouts twice a year of the new platforms. So a lot of people do have, extensive development times in ServiceNow or other ITSM systems. So that's actually pretty on par with what I'm seeing with most of my customers.
Great, thank you.
All right, next slide. All right, so as we talk about Stratusphere and ServiceNow, why would I integrate ServiceNow and Stratusphere together? When you look at most ServiceNow implementations, they have a lot of integration points. So you're pulling from VMware or Omnissa, your Citrix, your System Center, application performance connectors, cloud connectors, middleware, and each one of these cost money and cost me time, and I have to have a large ServiceNow instance to manage all those connectors, as well as a lot of developers to manage all those collectors. And I have to test them and upgrade them twice a year as ServiceNow goes through different rollout with their platform. So if you can hit the space bar, this is a build out here. As we talked about, each one of these costs money. Next, build out. So as we integrate Stratusphere into each one of these platforms, we're able to eliminate or potentially reduce the load on certain systems. So maybe I don't need my middleware or I don't need my security tools. Don't. No, good luck with that one. Security team is going to come get you on that one. But application performance, and at the end of the day, Stratusphere has more data. So up-to-date data, faster data, and more platforms. So I don't have to pull my Mac machines from Jamf and my Windows machines from Intune or System Center. I can pull all of that from a single platform, even my iGel systems and my Stratudesk, which doesn't have a ServiceNow connector. I can merge that data into ServiceNow, thereby reducing the cost. One more space bar. Reducing the, oh, nope, back. Thereby reducing the cost of my ServiceNow instance. As I remove connections, I make my development team more efficient, and my ServiceNow instance can actually get smaller because I have less connectors to deal with. I have a single point of truth in Stratusphere. I'm not pulling reboot time from System Center because it only does an inventory once a month. I have that data in Stratusphere, and it's much more flexible and faster. So giving my development team to be more efficient using our API in Stratusphere to pull all of that information from a single point of truth and making my company more efficient. So next slide.
Another poll question.
Okay, poll question number 2. How do you currently collect user experience metrics across your digital workspace?
Yeah, and be careful with this. We're not only talking about, like Stratusphere monitors user experience from an empirical standpoint, so CPU, memory, disk, and network. Here we're kind of talking about, and James may want to expand on this, is user sentiment. So James, can you kind of describe the difference? We have Stratusphere empirical numbers. Are we talking about user sentiment here for this question, or are you talking about the empirical data inside of Stratusphere? Kind of expand on
I
that.
think we're talking mainly about the empirical data, but obviously, as people may be aware, we're able to do both. We have user sentiment surveys built into Stratusphere, but this particular question, I think, is more about the empirical data.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Okay, we've got about 60%. Just a few more responses coming in here. Okay, think we've capped our, oh, no, maybe a little bit more. Thank you for contributing, appreciate it. Okay. And sharing the results. So majority dedicated DEX monitoring tools, and 0 that do not actively collect, which is good.
Yep. That's good.
Okay.
Right. Next slide. All right, so some use cases for Stratusphere. I'm going to kind of go through what kind of use cases or why would I deploy Stratusphere and connect it into ServiceNow. So first of all, it's got to come up the help desk. I need to get this data into the front line, so the people on the front line who are answering the phone calls from my user, when's the last time you rebooted, what's your CPU temperature, how far are you away from your access point. The goal here is first call resolution. So I hate it when I call the help desk and they say, hey, can you just reboot and call me back tomorrow? Well, I already rebooted this morning anyway, and that really upsets the users. So getting that data into the hands of the help desk people, they don't have to ask these questions. The goal is I want to ask for your login name, and then I have all the data I need to diagnose your platform. Oh, I can see here you actually need more memory. You have 16 gig of RAM and you're always got 2 gig in the page file. I'm going to order you a new machine. So to be able to resolve that ticket or properly route it to the proper location for proper escalation. So level 1 people taking that first line call to be able to have them resolve it in the first call or properly route it is the key reason for integrating our data into ServiceNow. Next slide.
Chris, I do have a question that popped up.
Sure.
How much load and space does this take up in ServiceNow?
Good question. So as you'll see in my demo here in a minute, we tell customers not to commit all the Stratusphere data to ServiceNow because you're talking about terabytes of information. So as Kristen calls into the help desk, I would press a button in ServiceNow. It would go and get the data from Stratusphere. It would show it to me on the screen. And then I would say commit that data to ServiceNow only if it's relevant to the ticket. So the customers I've worked with to build out this integration have used that methodology. Otherwise, you're going to have a very large ServiceNow instance storing a massive amount of data. So you don't want to pull all the data from Stratusphere into ServiceNow. You have it commit what you need. Now, other parameters like last reboot, things like that, you can run scripts inside of ServiceNow and have it perform actions. But generally, my customers that use my data tend to make it smaller because I'm not pulling from other platforms. So their ServiceNow instance actually shrinks because I'm not committing all the data from my security tools all the time in ServiceNow. I'm only committing the data that I need.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so application usage. This is a big one for just determining. So I worked with a customer a couple years ago. They accidentally deployed Visio to 10,000 machines. Microsoft
Oh dear,
came.
that's
Yeah.
not something you want to do.
Yes, Visio Pro to 10,000 machines. A simple slip of a click inside of SCCM to deploy it to all the machines worldwide in their environment. And then the next year, Microsoft came in and says, hey, we're going to do an audit. Hi, how you doing? Oh, by the way, we found out you're running Visio Pro. You owe us $10 million. Well, since they were running Stratusphere, they could actually show Microsoft, we know we deployed it, but only 50 or 100 people actually used it. We had Stratusphere empirical data that could actually show that the Visio Pro executable had only been executed by 50 or 100 users. So Microsoft, being very nice, said, okay, we'll cut it down to $1 million because you did actually deploy it. But things like that, recovering license cost. Another big one I've been doing with customers is Snagit. I've used Snagit for years. I love it, but the Windows snipping tool is actually pretty powerful. So most customers and most users are using the Windows snipping tool, even though Snagit is still on the machine. So I can tell if Snagit is in the foreground mode. Did it ever go foreground? Because Snagit is always running on my machine, but did it go into foreground mode, which means I actually used it? So they can start recovering the cost of these applications and utilities that they purchased over the years to supplement Windows 10 and Windows 11, even back to Windows 7 and things like that. So they just continually maintain these, and there's a huge amount of application recovery and software assets that you can recover. Some of my customers actually have people dedicated to this process. They actually look at all the applications, negotiate with the vendors, and watch this data inside of Stratusphere and ServiceNow to try and remove those runaway processes out there.
Well, if you think about it, Chris, because you've got your Microsoft audit, or say you've got Adobe products. Adobe Acrobat will be one that people might use for a potential use case, and then with this you can determine who's actually using the application and then either remove it or have the metrics to show the actual numbers. So it's a really useful thing for people to have.
Yeah, and with the Microsoft Store, like our company store, so my IT team may remove Camtasia from my machine because I haven't used it in 60 days according to Stratusphere. But since it's in the store, anytime I need it, I just go click on it and it comes right back. So, that installed versus used and licensing, I would not chew up a license when they removed it from my machine. It could freed up for someone else. Exactly. Application availability. So looking at the applications, if you're in the medical world, Epic, Meditech, simple Outlook, your email, Teams, via Jack Henry, which is account software for banking industry. So making sure these key applications are up and running in your infrastructure and not having any issues. What is the latency from Boise, Idaho, and a teller in a bank talking to my Jack Henry backend SQL servers that are in Nashville, Tennessee? So understanding those performance, the latency across the line, the application load time, making sure my critical applications that service my doctors, my tellers, people, trading, my trading desk for a financial industry. So making sure all those critical applications are up and running or very quickly be able to determine what's affecting that. Why is the latency so bad? So run a trace route from that machine in Boise, Idaho, back across my network and find the latency in the network so the networking team can go and resolve it. You can't hide from Stratusphere data. We bring all the different groups in a organization together. So the networking team, the application team, the desktop team, the server team, security team, we have all of that data. You can't hide from my numbers. You may say your latency or you got a 10 gig pipe, but I can tell the latency on the pipe is really, really high at this specific point in time from this machine in Boise, Idaho. Oh, look, it's a Wi-Fi issue. He's too far from the access point. So simple things like that can dramatically affect the application performance. Assess management. So gain visibility into the detailed hardware. So make, model, serial number. Under COVID, we had several large customers with a specific manufacturer where they had bought all these laptops, 30,000 laptops, sent people home, and guess what? They were catching on fire because the BIOS in the machine didn't do heat protection. So users were taking their machine, sitting in their lazy chair, and putting it on top of a pillow. And then they were complaining about how slow the machine is, or I'm talking to Citrix. So gaining that, why is my application running so slow? We looked at Stratusphere data. The CPU was in heat protection mode and trying to keep from catching on fire. But a certain manufacturer, the heat protection didn't work, and the machines were actually catching on fire. So we were able to help them identify those machines, make, model, serial number, BIOS information, and push out BIOS updates to basically keep those machines from catching on fire. But a good understanding of the asset management. What do I have in the field, even down to my power mics and my badge scanners that are plugged in my USB port? All of that data gives me really good information. So James calls up and says, I'm having a problem with my PC. I can see everything about his PC and all the devices plugged into it, all the BIOS versions, give me really good details to go and find out why is James having the issue? Then I flip it upside down. I had 10 tickets today with that issue. Now I can go and roll out a patch with my SCCM team to keep 100 people tomorrow from calling in with the same problem. Next slide. Thin client inventory. We talked about this earlier. So being able to get my iGel information, my Stratadesk, Wise, Tenzig, all my different third-party providers that don't have connectivity into ServiceNow, bringing in that inventory. So make, model, serial number of the machine in the field, the IP address, even do a speed test with our latest version to an ISP, do a latency check, do a trace route from the machine, my distance from the Wi-Fi, all of that data and bringing it into ServiceNow. So I know James is sitting in front of an iGel machine or a Tenzig machine at his house talking to my Azure environment, which is in Azure West in California, and I have both sides of the communication. I can see his Wi-Fi at his house and tell him he's too far from his access point, or he's changing frequencies or changing channels. And then that inventory information allows me to basically update my CMDB that know that James owns this device as well. So really inventory assets of the infrastructure as well as performance data. Next slide. All right, so what is the Stratusphere Base Integration Kit? This is a simple diagram, shows, I got a user, my help desk guy on the top left there, he's talking to ServiceNow. Got up in a web interface, user calls in, he would then enter that username. The query goes to a ServiceNow mid-server inside of my network, talks to my Stratusphere, could be multiple Stratusphere pods spread out around the world, and comes back and renders the answer back to the help desk person. So I call the help desk, I give them my login ID. They type in my login ID, ServiceNow goes and does a bunch of queries against Stratusphere to render me my data. When was the last time was I rebooted? What type of machine do I have? BIOS information, when's the last time I reported? All that data would be readily available to that help desk person. And you could even color code it as well, as I'm gonna show in the demo, to give the first line call support person the relevant data to either answer the question, resolve the question, or properly route it. That is the whole goal of this, is better user acceptance and better faster call resolution. It's a pretty simple setup here in the ServiceNow. Integration with Stratusphere UX, a couple example screenshots here, just how many users, how many open tickets, just general information that can be very quickly and easily built inside of ServiceNow. Next slide. Here's one that actually one of our partners.
Chris, one sec.
Yes.
I have a quick question here that came through. How long does it take to implement the connector in Stratusphere UX in ServiceNow? And what is the list price of the connector?
Okay. Yep. So the actual connection, put it in the base integration kit. So you go to the store in your instance, you'd go to the store, search for Liquidware or Stratusphere, then you activate it in your dev, your QA, your prod instances, and then you tell it, or you connect it. I'll show this in a minute in the demo. You connect it to your ServiceNow, the API, and directly to the database. So generally, if you've deployed the application in your infrastructure, it's about 5 minutes to turn it on, literally. And I did a large customer of mine with 5 pods. It took 8 minutes because we had to type in all the IP information and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to activate. From a costing standpoint, there are 2 SKUs, a one-time fee. So it's either $5,000 or $10,000. With the 5,000, you get, I think, 4 hours of support just to help you get it set up and any diagnostics or issues you may have with our developers. The 10,000 one, I think you get 8 or 10 hours of consulting services, and that really helps you get started. So example code, how do I do this query? So a little bit more time with our developers to help you get started. Because really, once you get started and you understand the API builder and how to do it, and some of the example code that we provide to you, it's the developers are pretty much off and running.
Great, thank you.
Here's an example of one of our partners that actually built a security posture. So what are the operating systems? What are the firewalls? Are they disabled? So this is a dashboard that they have. So if you search for Stratusphere, you're going to see us come up and my partner come up. And this is a free tool that they have because they want to help write and develop ServiceNow. So in the ServiceNow store, you'll actually see this come up. And this is a free tool that they built, runs off of Stratusphere data from a security posture. There's also another screen that has application recovery information. So it's a pretty cool, I think they call it the power tools for ServiceNow. Next slide. All right, so let's do a quick demo. So this is my ServiceNow demo instance. All right, so yeah, as we talked about, this is Stratusphere 6.7, and you've got huge amount of metrics in here. But I don't want to have to train my help desk on a different interface. They're already in ServiceNow, and I need to keep them in ServiceNow. So I can use my API. Here's an example of my API builder to select the individual columns that I'm interested in and create an API call. And this is what the developers would use behind the screens to actually program in ServiceNow. So we got, we were asked earlier about the setup. So here's my demo system. This is all internal demo data. So no production data in here. So my DNS, that would be for the API. This is for my ServiceNow to enter my API information. Then the database, so talking directly to the database. Scheduling how often does it pull. So it does a full pull once a day, then a differential pull every 10 minutes. So scheduling how the data comes into Stratusphere, really easy to set up. And once that's set up, it starts pulling data from Stratusphere. So very simple. Now I can go to my, technical flaw here. Favorites. So from there, what it does is it will pull in user machine inventory. So the ServiceNow kit will pull in machine inventory, Mac, VMware, 10zig, doesn't matter, and into different tables. And it also pulls in user inventory into tables. So all my OU information and things like that. And then what I've done is I had my developers create a small ITSM system, so a ticketing system, basically mock it up for demo purposes only. So I do new, I'm going to create a new ticket. Chris Walker is called into the help desk. So I type in Chris Walker. This is because I've got so many testing systems. That's why I'm showing up multiple times out here. So I click on Chris Walker. It shows me the past 5 machines. So there's my laptop I'm actually on right now. There's my MacBook Pro that I was on yesterday. So I'm going to click on this one because Chris has said, hey, I'm having a problem with my laptop at my house. Loading the data. So this is running an API call to Stratusphere to go and get my data. And now basic information. So this came from the inventory tables that were already in ServiceNow. My make, model, I could put serial number, the last time my machine was rebooted. So just core information that came directly from the tables, which are already imported by the kit. Then I had my developers, also I wanted a graph. So graph my CPU usage, my memory usage, my disk response time, and then what my customers would do. So this is rendered to me as the help desk person. And then I would click a button up here because I had an issue, and I would say, commit this to the record. So none of this would be committed to the record until the help desk person said commit it, because he actually does need more memory. I can see, potentially users running at 80, 90% all the time. So I'd want to commit that graph and prove that this user actually needed more memory for their virtual machine or physical machine, and we need to route them to the proper place to get that data. Also, I had them add in Wi-Fi information, and this could be, pretty much anything you want to see. So like I am, here's my frequency, here's my make, the actual access point that I'm talking to. Notice here, I actually changed different access points. So I have a mesh network in my house. So 0430, then 09E0. So I went to a different access point in my house. I even changed frequencies, 5 gigahertz to 2.4. Well, that affects my VPN. My VPN will actually rebuild itself. So instead of having all this in black and white, I'd probably color code it so it would pop out directly at the end user as for this being an issue. You don't want, I could put on here distance from the access point as well, because Stratusphere has that. You're too far from the access point. So the idea, again, being able to allow my help desk person to enter in a user ID, that's all I asked them. Then they told me they had a problem with a machine at their house. I then have very detailed level data about that user and that machine and with a potential issue. So you could pull in any of the Stratusphere metrics into here, and then they would commit it to the record to prove that problem, and then either escalate or route to another department to go and add more memory to that specific machine. The goal is, like I spoke about earlier, first call resolution or proper routing and faster resolution. That's the key to the system as well. Yep. All right. Any questions on that? Now, this, just a heads up, this is a template. This is not built into the kit. This is programming that you did. My customers told me very carefully, do not mess with my CMDB. So the history and the other information is pulled into different tables, and this will be programming with example code that we give you to be able to program this into your ServiceNow instance.
We do have a question.
Uh-huh.
Okay, does Liquidware have ServiceNow development?
We have partnered with several partners, both on the Fed and the commercial space, to provide this service. So no, Liquidware does not have ServiceNow developers on staff. I know a pretty good bit about ServiceNow. I can help you install it and get it up and running, even show you some example code. But past that, we have several integration partners, both commercial and Fed, that would come in and help you with that.
Great. I think we're all caught up.
Okay. All right, let me stop sharing. Where's the stop sharing button? Okay, James, back to you.
Okay. Bear me 1 second. All right. So, some of you may or may not have seen my social media posts. I said you do have a chance to win a Lego Millennium Falcon. So it's really easy. We have at Liquidware, our Liquidware community, it's on Slack. What we have is we have several channels around the different solutions. And the really great thing about our Slack community is that you have the whole of Liquidware on there. You have our PMs for our solutions. Chris is on there answering questions. Even Jason Maddox and David Benjamin, our CTO and CEO, are on there. In fact, Jason answers more questions than most people on there. So if you want to interact with anyone from Liquidware, Liquidware community is the place to do. So as I said, you have the chance to win this Lego Millennium Falcon, and all you have to do is sign up for community. So just scan that QR code and you go through a small registration process. The deadline is the 30th at 5 p.m. Central. I will then do the draw on the 2nd of October. So it will take you 2 minutes and you have the chance to win a really cool piece. If you like Lego or Star Wars or your kids inverted commas, if you just want it for yourself, go ahead and just sign up today. Chris, any final thoughts or any other questions that have come in?
Now, the biggest thing from us as IT people and engineers, so I work on the VDI environment, or I work on the desktop team, and it's like, this looks really cool. Let's plug it into ServiceNow and I can have it up and running tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. So just be real careful. It does take time to integrate this with ServiceNow. By the way, we didn't talk about, I don't think we mentioned it, since Stratusphere has a full API, it's not limited to ServiceNow. So other ticketing systems that you may have, I've even had customers use Excel spreadsheets with Visual Basic to pull data out of Stratusphere, Power BI, Tableau, Splunk. So don't think that we're talking just specifically here about ServiceNow, because with our open API, literally you can pull our data into any platform, and that's very powerful.
Yeah, I think that's one thing, and the really cool thing about our API builder, it's built into the product. There's no extra cost to it, so you can go away and integrate it with other platforms. You may with other vendors potentially, have to buy an add-on or something like that, but our API builder is built into the product.
What's crazy is some of our competitors don't even have an API. You actually have to consult with them to write specific SQL queries. And then if you upgrade, the SQL gets broke. So yeah, some of our competitors out there don't even have an API. But yeah, so people ask me, hey, how much time does it take to get my developers up to speed? Like James talked about, our API builder is really simple. You say, I want this column.
You want to show our API builder really quickly,
Yeah,
Chris?
yeah. Let me share my screen. I cannot start.
Hold on, let me stop and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, we showed this. I actually just brought up my Slack interface here. Yeah, here in our API builder. So literally, I'm selecting which inspector. So I want the summary inspector, my dates in my machine, and it's building my API call right here. So as I go through and select my columns that I'm after, it's adding my columns and then I give this URL right here to my developer, and it spits out the data that I need. So it's pretty simple. You know, the date, how do you want the information formatted? I wanted a comma delimited file. So with the API builder, this is really powerful. I don't have to be a programmer. Literally,
Yeah,
I'm
I was
just
going to say, I'm not a programmer myself, so like, but it looks like with a little bit, I could just go in and build out the API, and then it said hand it over to a developer and
yep.
make a huge difference, and be able to pull in that data.
Yeah, yeah. So exactly. So I'm the IT guy, and I'm asking my developers to go build me a screen. So what I'd do is I'd come in here in the API builder, and I'd pick the columns that I want, the time range that I want, and tell them that I want it in a pie chart. They would then take this URL right here, put it into ServiceNow or Power BI or whatever you want to, and then that programmer could then work in that language to build me a pie chart. It's literally that simple. So most calls for training on this with developers is about 10 minutes, literally. Yep.
Yeah, no, it is one of the most powerful features, I think, of Stratusphere, because it's about getting all that data out and get it into some sort of presentable format. And you literally just generate the API and then can do, as you said, Power BI obviously is the big one we see, and you can produce some really amazing graphs by utilizing the API builder.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, I got a lot of customers who are integrating it with other platforms because why would I want to have my executives log into Stratusphere when they're already in Power BI Cloud or they're already in Azure Analytics? I have customers pushing this data into Azure Analytics because really weird, Intune doesn't pick up the serial number of the machine. I thought that was crazy. Intune does not grab the serial number, so they're piping that data. And then one of my customers also took it so far as to integrate it with Dell warranty capabilities. So the help desk can actually, look up the user, hit the machine. It has the serial number. It does a quick warranty check against Dell and tells them the warranty status of the device. It's been completely automated in Azure Analytics. It's really crazy. But he had to augment the data with Stratusphere data to get that serial number information. All right. Any other questions?
We'll
I
leave the
don't.
QR code on screen in case anyone wants to
Yes, to
sign
join
up.
the community. And if there are any
Yes.
questions, checking the chat. I
Yep.
don't see any at the moment, but we had a lot of good questions coming up today. So if there's nothing else, James, Chris, thank you guys so much for your time today. And everyone, there will be an email that will be sent out within the next 24 to 48 hours, which will have a link to the recording. So, and feel free to ask us any questions, sales@liquidware.com, marketing@liquidware.com, and we're happy that you've joined us today. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.